Are they going to switch schools? Why are they switching schools?
Yeah, there's a shitload of questions and kind of a can of worms you don't really want to open.
And guess what's going to happen? Those kids are going to be considered orphans in the province.
Which is insane to think that, there's a ton of family members with open arms, but because there was no will made that you weren't covered properly.
There's no will made, which means sons are orphans, which nobody knows this.
Yeah.
No one will ever think about this. Oh, no, don't worry.
Well, and that's the thing, right? You think that people would be fair with your children, of anything, right? When, unfortunately, the way that the government has got their stuff, put out into place right now, unfortunately, children are just as much of an income for the government as other things. Yeah, and it's sad.
So, listeners, please have will. It doesn't matter if you have nothing or if you have millions.
Now, there's another thing I was actually looking at, too, the safety kits. Those are a really great idea. Those child safety kits that are being sold by insurance companies right now. I had somebody come by and do some for my 3. And it was just, fingerprints and a bit of a hair sample, a recent picture. Yes. I found that those were very helpful because you never know people, unfortunately, knock on wood.
World,
yeah, there's a ton of weirdos in this world, and, God forbid your kids are at the wrong place at the wrong time. At least you have, people, I don't know if you've ever noticed or watched those, CSI TV shows or, actual real documentaries and stuff.
Big Line, CSI, all of them.
Those are my shows, too. Yeah, I'm super into that stuff. So I always see, people in that kind of shock mode where, what was they wearing last or, what kind of shoes do they have on? And you really don't, you almost go into a shock mode at that point, I'd think, right? And you don't even think about, the clothes they were wearing or the shoes they were wearing or the way their hair was or, you know what I mean? You almost can't even remember the color of their eyes at that point because you're in so much shock that your child is missing, right? So it's always nice to have something like that on hand so that, with all the stress that would be going on at a time like that, it kind of eliminates that frantic, trying to help out and wondering what you can do to make the situation easier, right?
Speaking of, I'm glad that we're talking about the government and some issues that they have. Well, with the many they have. I don't know if you saw on the news the other day, some of these smart readers, the hydrometers that the government was mandatory that every household had to put on.
I was seeing something briefly about that. So
they're blowing up and catching on fire.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, they're blowing up and catching on fire. And so, it was on the news, a couple of homeowners, lucky they were home where they just got home, so they could, they put the fire out, because it's on the outside of the house. Lucky they didn't go in, go inside. But now, Hydro One, Toronto Hydro, and they're demanding that the homeowners pay for the damages and pay for the replacement of the meter.
Now that's insane considering all of these individuals were recommended and asked by the government to get their things up to date by adding this piece of equipment that has now blown up the side of their house. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, and now they're demanding that the homeowner takes responsibility of paying for the damages and paying for the repairs and the new meter.
Which is just insane, Like, to be honest, the Canadian government has really let me down. I am just in awe on all of the new taxes that have come into play.
Carbon tax here, tax this, tax on top of tax on top of tax.
Yeah, like it's becoming unbearable. We covered a bit of this last week about that older lady in Toronto somewhere who was at that press conference. I think that he had done
with Prime Minister Trudeau, and then
yes,
he goes, Then take the carbon tax off.
Well, and it's his very blatant response proved that, his spoon-fed life has proven that he has absolutely no first-hand knowledge of what this is doing to some of the people who are in either middle class, let alone the lower class. The higher class people are now suffering also.
There is no more middle class. That middle class has disappeared because of all these taxes and our inflation rate. And
we're either poverty or high class. That's it.
Yeah, there's only two now. That middle class has disappeared because of we don't make enough to accommodate for inflation.
Yeah. And it's insane to think that people are going without, I had a friend of mine who, is going through an issue. I had actually a few friends of mine that are going through financial issues right now, between hydro being cut off in their home or, the loss of a vehicle being repossessed. It's just insane to think that, these politicians can sit back and just relax and be okay with that. It pisses me off.
Because they don't care because they're set for life.
Oh, yeah.
Even after they leave office, they're set.
And
they're set for life. The pension they're going to get, the salary they get even after they leave office, they're set for life.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Once you've got your foot in the door with that, it's kind of your foot's always kind of in there. And people don't really realize that, like, honestly, the one thing that I can say to people is when election time comes around this friggin' year, people, be a little bit more careful, okay? When you go to elect somebody, just watch for the poker face. There's a lot of people out there that really aren't in it for the best of everybody else, but they're in there for the best of themselves. And we've seen that kind of very blatantly shown in the last 2 years or so now, and this government that we've got right now is just absolutely blown my mind. It's an absolute joke. It's a disgrace.
I think provincially, the Conservatives with Brown, I think he said, like obviously there's these political promises and stuff, but he stood up to win, and every single time she said something, he stood up to her.
Well,
so I think he has my vote.
Well, and it started with the autistic cutbacks that really pissed me off. I have a big heart for children with medical.
Children have disabilities because I can set up their disability benefits for them.
Yeah.
And same thing, getting cutbacks.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I don't think that we should be taking from our youth, and let alone our most vulnerable youth, for that matter. I don't think that. Starting with cutbacks should not have started with those children, and that's exactly where it began. As soon as they were put into office, all of a sudden the autistic, different treatments and stuff were being removed. Families were going without benefits that they were used to. It made me sick to my stomach. If they want to make
cut back at the government level. How about cut back their salaries?
Yeah. And
they'll save lots of money if they cut back their salaries.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like when you see that there's certain individuals being paid for, a job that may only take them a week and they're getting an $80,000 salary for it, you're kind of a little upset about that. Being a taxpayer and actually
these companies, CEOs getting raises, and these are companies that have these government contracts.
Well, and the thing that pisses me off is
they're getting raises, and they made $4 million last year as their salary. Well, you know what? They don't need to make $4 million.
Well, and it makes absolutely no sense to me that the people nowadays will complain about, my tax-paying dollars shouldn't go towards people on assistance or, refugees or this and that. But you know what? If anything, you guys should be complaining about the amount of money that goes towards our politicians. To be honest, they got a hell of a lot more than our people on assistance do, I'm sure. And I'm sure that they get a lot more than the Syrian refugees did. To be honest, I honestly think that letting these people into our country was, an amazing gesture on Canada's behalf. I'm very proud for the Canadian people to be able to.
I feel the same way, except for again, this is media because we already saw certain footage.
Yep.
If these people were so dire need, how do they have Jordans and Nikes and leather jackets and fur coats walking off the plane?
Oh, and that's the thing, and that's what I was saying is, a lot of the times they were trying to tell us that, they were given these things as soon as they got off the planes. I did dig a little bit into that when I worked for a company in Boston, because I was kind of the same thing. We had a big discussion about politics one night, and, I was very in awe about their apparel and all of that when they came in and off those planes, because I said the same thing.
If they were living in refugee tents, but also they had all this kind of stuff, and then they're put into a Hilton, and they're complaining because it's not a good.
Well, and I've always said
the kind of food that they're used to. Well, if you lived in a tent, you didn't have no food.
Well, and that's the thing, right? That's where I drew my line. I was very happy to accommodate these people and be, I was actually staying in a hotel while I had planned a little bit of a family getaway with my family when the time of that happened, and we had stayed, beside and alongside some of these families who were living in these places at the time, and, they're very nice people. A lot of them spoke English. They seemed very respectful, but there was actually quite, an online and news kind of public broadcasting about people complaining about their situations. And that's what really upset me is, if you're coming from somewhere that is,
war-torn.
Yeah, exactly. You're seeing the most disgusting disasters left and right as soon as you walk out of your home, or better yet, your home is being blown up, or your family members are being, hurt or dismembered in front of you.
And you're put into a 5-star hotel with all expenses paid. And
Exactly.
You're complaining?
Yeah, you should not be complaining.
Go back home.
Especially, exactly. And that was my thing here. In Canada, we're respectful of everyone's, customs and ethnicities and religions and stuff. We're very, open speech, and we all kind of are accepting of each other here in Canada. And that was the thing that
enough is enough.
Well, and the biggest thing that really stood out to me is these people seemed very like they needed to be specially accommodated on so many extra levels. That really, for people who should be coming in and be thankful and be grateful that they have a place to put their head at night that's safe with food.
Except they're getting 5-star hotels. They're getting whatever they want, whatever clothes they want. They're getting $3,000 a month allowance.
Yeah.
If their kids are going to university or college, it's free education. Well, you know what? If the government can pay for free education for immigrants and refugees, why can't they pay for education for people who are already here who would need it? Why should they be OSAP then? We shouldn't have OSAP. Kids should have a free education.
Yeah.
If they have it, well, why can't our kids have it?
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Why don't I get $3,000 a month allowance?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing I think that really pissed the Canadian people off was the fact that, we're now responsible for pretty much helping support, families of 5 or more. In some cases they had multiple children, from anywhere from 5 to 8, maybe more children. It's kind of it's a wow factor in people's brains. I think they kind of go, holy crap, like how is that going to be possible? Like, to be honest, the one thing I've really been disappointed in Canada is we've always put others before ourselves. Canada has its own share of poverty. We have our own share of homeless people.
I always say take care of your own backyard first.
Yeah, and I see people constantly on social media going out in Toronto and doing random acts of kindness and helping to feed our homeless. And, it's like when you see the people of Canada sleeping on the streets, but these people have, warm, cozy beds to go to sleep in with a 5-star hotel paid for, it's kind of a piss off, right? There was a school that was down the street from my house before when I had lived down the mountain here in Hamilton. It was called King George, and they were apparently supposed to be opening it up to Syrian refugees to stay long-term for a little while. It was more or less a school that was on the breaks of being torn down. It was kind of just an abandoned open building at that point, and they were going to house people there. And I said, it's amazing how all of a sudden they were opening these doors to people like this, which is great. I'm not knocking it, but why could you not have opened that to our homeless? You know what I mean? Like, to me, I was just like, I don't see the logic behind. Our homeless people have to go to, a shelter.
You know what the logic is? Is the third-party companies who are opening this up getting the government contracts and getting paid to do it.
Well, and there's the number of government-paid sponsors that were bringing in these Syrian families too, right? I could only imagine how much money the government made off them.
Exactly.
Right, so it's definitely, it always brings us back to this, money grab and media control and all of that stuff. Speaking of things going on around the world, though, I was looking at, Christian mentioned to me something about earthquakes today in Italy, and I hadn't even seen it. I looked it up, and oh my God, to be honest, I had no idea.
Yeah, in central Italy, they've been getting hammered. You can say the last calendar year, they've had 80 earthquakes in the last calendar year in central Italy. And near Naples, all that region there in central Italy, and it's really bad.
Well, and that was the thing. Like, to be honest, I was looking through the schedule because there's a website online that's kind of a geographical website that keeps track of stuff like that. And they were saying that, like, in the last 5 days ago, they had 9 earthquakes in one day.
Yes.
Like, that's insane.
Do you see that on the mainstream media?
No. I seen it on it was MSN.com, I believe.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, on mainstream, do you see
No,
that
and that's the thing. They would rather broadcast Trump.
Exactly.
Like, it's just, honestly, and those kinds of, and these weren't just, 2.0 magnitude earthquakes. This is 4 and up magnitudes.
But you don't hear it on the news. You don't hear it on CNN.
Nothing. No, nothing. Not a thing. I haven't even seen it, which is why I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Like, I pay attention to things online, of course. Being in radio, you have to keep your eye open for different events and disasters and things that are going on around the world, news and stuff. And to be honest, I haven't heard a wink of anything to do with any
only
earthquake.
People that are, like, within the Italian community like businesses and associations, like they're doing like raising money and relief funds for the people in Central Italy. But if not, you don't hear it anywhere.
Yeah, no, and you know what? It's sad because those are things that should be broadcasted. Honestly, I couldn't give two shits about Trump and what his wife and him are doing.